Perfect. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for attending another round of the SEG Women's Network webinar series. I'm really excited. Today we have two panelists with us today. Two presenters with us today. Sorry, my words are already not working this morning. So I'd like to introduce them, starting with Adriana Sola, who started in the geotechnical world and moved into the oil and gas industry with a career that spanned over 20 years now. Sorry for my dog. Adriana has steadily worked her way around the globe, currently working at PGS, looking after sales and services in the Latin America and Caribbean region, after spending almost 10 years in Asia Pacific, conducting new business, predominantly in Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Prior to that, her focus was on a new venture business in West Africa and started out in the seismic industry as an offshore geophysicist. She holds a Master's of Science in Natural Materials and a Bachelor's of Science in Applied Geoscience Engineering from University Paul Sabatier. Did I say that correct? Okay, good. I'm just making sure. Also a Master's in Renewables during the pandemic. I wanted to point that out. I think that's really wonderful, which allowed her to take on the additional role for PGS new energy business for the region. And also we have Kristen Walker with us, who's been in the industry for 13 years and counting. So Kristen began her career at Anadarko, where she worked in a variety of roles from geological technology, doing petroleum systems modeling for new ventures, assets worldwide, to onshore development drilling. After Anadarko, she worked at BHP in the Gulf of Mexico exploration and is currently a senior geoscientist at W&T. So Kristen has a well-rounded view of what one needs to succeed in finding and producing energy at the world, but at the same time, recognizes that climate change and being good stewards of our environment has come to the forefront of their business in the last decade. So she gets to be a part of the energy transition. And hopefully I covered there's so much that you're going to learn from these two today. So I was trying to capture that all in this introduction, but they're going to be talking to you today about resilience and career development in a dynamic industry. There is a Q&A option on the bottom, just FYI. So please, as you have questions, go ahead and type them into the question box and we'll come back to those at the end of the session today. And if you're having any issues, please do send chats to the host and we'll address that for you. But otherwise, I'll let you take off.
Thank you, Blair. Thanks, the SEG Women Network, to allow us to be here today. I want to say good day, good afternoon, good evening to anyone that is joining today on this webinar. So Christine and I, as you see, we are two presenters today. We are going to touch a topic that is very relevant to all of us in this industry and the overall energy sector. It's the concept of resilience, why we need to develop resilience in order to be and still part of this dynamic industry and in this dynamic market. And I say market a few times today, but more important, someone that we still marketable and still having a value to be at to ourselves. We'll have two parts of this talk. The first will be done by me, where I will explain what is resilience, why we need it, and why it does have an impact on the outcome results in the personal and professional life. I will go through my journey on this roller coaster career and how I had to become a chameleon. And we will use some of the toolbox items, then I will present and some results of this toolbox, basically. And then I will pass the baton to Christine, where she will explain her journey. It's interesting to mention that we both have worked in the industry for a while. We both have got quite similar backgrounds, I will say, but we have taken completely different approaches in our career. And we were colleagues until not long ago, and now we're friends. So take this, it's about networking. On the next slide, I will start. You can see this fun park. I don't know where I got that picture from, but I'm sure here close to Houston, we got the Six Flags. They got big roller coasters. But you know also that the oil price fluctuates, and therefore is a key of affecting our job security. But with just a couple of years in the pandemic and an energy transition, politics associated, worldwide economy, And the effects of a media and a current war has made this roller coaster even more steeper than what it used to be. It's not right now just about the oil price, it's about other external factors that have affected our industry at the point that if we carry on doing what we always have been doing, we will not get there. We need to adjust ourselves on the way we think and we do more how we could adapt ourselves. So hold the rails. It's a fun industry though, and let's start it. You must be thinking, why she's keep putting this background with this nice picture of all these stationary items well distributed? Well, it's because when I was very small and I was at the school and then in the higher school back home, I was not taught that things can get messy and disorganized. I always thought that basically everything is well arranged. So the reality is not this one. We all know what we're going to go through today. Then we have been through different downturns, and I don't think we were on the last one. So change, it happens naturally. Sometimes we don't expect it, and we need to adapt to that. And I have got this lovely chameleon here as a picture, and I want to touch on the chameleons. So they are creatures and they are able to adapt to any environment by changing colors for camouflage, mating temperature, or when reacting to stress. They also react to lightning and they shift colors when responding to other chameleons. Chameleons also adapt to their surroundings through adept vision and climbing. Chameleons are amazing, but so we are. So we are blessed with the ability to change and adapt to any situation, circumstance, and environment. In this slide, and I'm pointing here, I did a stretch that covered my career, about 22 years now. I started in beginning of 2001 in the oil and gas industry, and here you will see that there is at the end. So basically about, let's call it 20 years. This energy is the most resilient of the industries. It's driven by technology and digital tools. The energy sector can identify opportunities to make their end-to-end value chain more efficient and agile. In the long term, COVID-19 has set the stage for positive and efficient changes in how energy stakeholders strategize and operate. The oil business is so used to be a roller coaster nature of the market that even though the market is good now, we're all getting ready for the next one. So I don't know if you know, but since COVID, over 105 companies on the energy sector, say oil and gas, I would say rather, have cut 30% of their budget in exploration, which is the equivalent of $82 billion. Pressure of the energy industry right now is huge, and banks will not provide the financial backing that they used to do before to take off some of the projects. Governments have started to put, as part of the work commitments of some operators, CO2 mitigation, and basically it's out there changing, then it's continuously happening. Coming back to the graphic, if you can see, I said 22 years in the industry. The black arrow is when I started joining the industry, and 6 weeks later, it was the first downturn. So I was on my ship offshore. I will go back to my story, but during my trip, there were already noise that the things were going not to go so well, and I might not have been able to come back on the ship. So they asked me to pack my stuff in case I couldn't come back later. Another one, another one, another one, and another one. Being memorable, this one, because we reached the oil price at -40. And I will remember that one because it was my birthday day. So at that day, I wasn't too happy about that. So 22 years and 5 downturns, which makes an average of 4.5 years to expect the next one. So that's why I said the resilience is a good concept to have it when you are in this industry. A bit on the theoric, and then we go into the practical. According to the American Psychological Association, APA, resilience is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, threats, or other significant sources of stress. It refers to both the process and the outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experience. Resilience is all about your response, managing your mindset and emotions, being productive, and cultivating high self-care. And we'll get to that. When we build resilience, we can weather the severe storms. It's basically bouncing back from difficulties and experience that we are into. Some people more naturally, they have got this, some others, they need to work. It's like a muscle. When you go to the gym the first day and it's difficult, you go second, third day, it's getting better, but then on the second week, you're good. So this is more you develop this resilience, more you have it with you, and it will go naturally later on. And why resilience is important? Well, it's important because it's needed to process and overcome hardship. Those people lacking of resilience can get easy overwhelmed and may turn up with an unhealthy coping mechanism. Resilient people tap into their strengths and support systems and tools to overcome challenges and go through the problems. And I believe that resilient people, which I will say I will consider myself being one, we see the opportunity in change. And for change, it's basically being out of your comfort zone. I did read quite a lot about the topic, and I found that these four concepts, so the coping, the grit, the making sense, and the emotional intelligence, they are four items that they basically define what resilience will be. So I will basically touch briefly on each before I'm moving to my story. But coping is being able to tap into the inner resources, for instance, skills and strengths to recover from problems and challenges. So be able to bounce back. It's defined like the kind of thoughts and behaviors mobilized to manage internal and external stressful situations. So what will be our process to cope with that? Grit, it's basically you are riding your horse, you fall off, and you need to get back. So Mona slap you, you react, you get in. You run a marathon, it's not, it has been difficult, you finish, it's that feeling. It's basically resilient people don't give up. They find the strengths to tackle problems with a head on, overcome adversity, and move with their life. So get on, move on. The emotional intelligence is being able to analyze and manage feelings and emotions is a key of success factor to deal with difficult situations in a positive way. So resilient people tend to be positive. And finally, the sense making is being able to make sense of the past, experience, learn from the mistakes, and being able to set up goals and purpose for the future. So with the little theory part here, we get into my story. So you see the worldwide few dots around Europe and a few in Asia and one in Houston. So what happened? I was born in this beautiful city in the Mediterranean, where I grew up in a school that we learn Catalan, which is my mother tongue, Spanish and French, no English. So remember that one. And I had a beautiful time there. But unfortunately, life is tough, as I said. And when I was 19, my father passed away after 2 years of battling cancer. And that was not an easy, it was not easy to get through. So my father was a scientist. He spent a lot of time lecturing at the uni, and then he moved to be an entrepreneur. And he always said, look, Adriana, go out and adventure yourself. It's a beautiful goal. So when that happened, I had to take a big first decision for me. It was either I stay home, I look after my little brother and stay with my mother, or basically I pick up the bags and I go. And I decided to go to the last one. Pick up my bags and I moved to France, in Toulouse, where I had finished the uni, and then I did a master's, and I was hired to work a couple of years on a civil engineer lab. And it was very interesting, but at the end, my boss said, look, we can't carry on with this. We need to end the contract. And that was another decision, what I do. Should I stay here where I feel good, or do I want more? So I start sending CVs around, and I got a phone call from a geophysical company in Paris that I tried to find out, and they said, do you like sailing? I was like, yeah, I like vessels. I mean, I did a course when I was little on sailing boats. It's like, okay, no problem. So I was sent to Paris. I passed an interview, and it was to work on seismic vessels. So it was nothing about sailing. And I said, look, the only thing I'm asking you is, please do not send me on an English boat because I don't speak English. I said, no problem, no problem. It's an easy request. So unfortunately, I ended up going my first trip to New Orleans. It was a time then Horizon sold the Symphony and Amadeus to CGG. So I was the first crew of French speakers in an English/Norwegian vessel. So I spent 6 weeks trying to figure out how to communicate with people. And that was not easy either, but I didn't have a choice. I didn't have an helicopter that will take me with my bags back home. So I had to figure out how I will do that. And I did learn. I learned a lot. I learned English, obviously not 6 weeks, but I spent 4 years working offshore. I was lucky to go around a lot of countries, working on people that never in my life I thought I would meet elsewhere. So I developed this sense of team, because you need to work as a team when you are offshore. You are alone, you are isolated. I learned my English, but the most important thing I learned about myself. Being pushed to limit situations makes you to realize how strong you can be, because there is no other choice. And I don't regret this. It was the time that I decided I had to move into an office, because that was getting older and I wanted to have a normal life, because even between my friends, it's like, oh, when are you coming back? Or are you going again? It was not a normal life for someone like me. So I decided to move to London in a processing center on a technical role. And to be honest, I didn't last too long. I realized that me staying in front of a computer for 8 hours every day, doing some imaging processing, it wasn't for me. So I jumped ships and I went to another company to start a commercial role, where I did learn a lot because I was a technical person. So it took a while to get into the commercial side. And then I had the opportunity in London as well to move to PGS. And I look after the West Africa for 5-6 years. So I had the chance to be engaged with a lot of governments as a kind of a relationship to get projects off the ground. And I will explain you a couple of examples from that time. And then I was offered a position in Asia, where I spent almost a decade there. I learned a lot about myself again, but more about the different cultures, then how they are challenges to deal with governments. Each country is different, and it's only rewarding. And it did affect a lot, these 9 years, a lot on the networking, which I want to touch. And I spent a few minutes on the networking later on in a couple of slides. But after 9 years in Asia, I work a lot in Indonesia and Philippines and Vietnam. And then PGS, and thanks to PGS, I have been able to do this. So I'm very grateful to be working for a company that allows to basically grow. And I moved to Houston, where I look after Latin America and the Caribbean. And it has been tough because with the COVID, part of my role, and it's traveling and engaging with people, has been reduced. So I had to use virtual platforms to basically get to know people and present my work. But as we are recovering of the pandemic, life start as a normal. So I'm very grateful to be able to start engaging with other countries and other cultures. Some items I want to touch on this, and you will see the icons here on the top, is basically networking, skills, and the need of growing and developing, and the learning part, I will say. One of the items I find very relevant through all these downturns of the industry is basically seeing where am I locating on this roller coaster, how I can get there where I want, and what's the methods or the skills I'm going to use to get where I want. I have started, especially with the COVID, I could see myself, I was very recluded here in Houston. And I start through a friend of mine. She pointed me to someone very senior in an old company that had made that transition to the energy transition. and I start taking some sessions on mentoring and how I could basically roll my transition as well. And we spent over 6 months and we draft a plan. And one of the plans, it was basically a kind of a course that I could use myself to learn during this pandemic and be stronger at the end. In addition, I joined a couple of programs done by societies and the AAPG. And I think Rod is the girl that I have been mentoring. She's here today at the webinar, and it's something that has bring a lot to me, being able to help people to progress and find themselves on how this career can go, advising and basically listening young talents how they can come into this industry. It's in times where things are tough, it's very rewarding to be able to transfer this knowledge, but also I know we do with experienced people. It's good to be able to direct young talent. I have already enrolled, and this is a bit of advertising, on the Micro 635 mentoring program that the SEG has got. So if you are interested, please either you ping me or Shelley and Blair can help you on that. It's worth it, believe me. The next topic I have here, it's the inspiration, the empowering tools that we have got, and sometimes we don't even know that they exist. So one is basically books, friendships, webinars, but one that it's very important is when it comes to networking. So I want to touch on this, on the networking. People think that networking is either business related, so I can know X, Y, Z people, and that will help me to run business or get some more influence, or finding a job. We will get some statistics after on the last slide of Christine, but the idea here is networking is more deeper than that. I find that between the mentoring and the networking, there is a kind of a transition. And you can have this shallow networking where you have got 600 contacts in LinkedIn, but in reality, there is people out there that you need to maintain relationships. Then they might be all colleagues, it might be people that they were with you at the uni, then they have grown in the industry, and you find as well other friends and you met through your journey that can help you to advise. So the networking can be a role of advisor. I mean, I got thinking now, 6-7 people that I know I can call anytime when I have a problem or a kind of dumb moment, and they will give me some advice, what is best for me, because they know me and they know with my character and my skills what maybe I need to do to learn more and to fit on this gap. And the study and learning and self-discover. This is very important to understand. When you self-discover, the value that you can bring to the market. And it links as well again with the networking and the mentoring, because my advice, it was where I find that I had some gaps. The way to fill these gaps and feel good, it was learning. So I did this master's on renewables during the pandemic, which brought me a kind of a part-time role in my current company, being the POC of the NSA on the energy transition. But also, then I realized that there were some topics like the geothermics on the biofuel. Then I want to do more in-depth course during my free time. If I want to spend my free time on the evenings or when I have time, it needs to be something that it's meaningful to me. And finally, the pushing to more. It's super important. Do not stay in your comfort zone. it can, for me in that case, it's a communication. I know that if no one had pushed me today here, I wouldn't be doing the talk. I'm used to talk to webinars and forums and presentations, but it's related to the work I do. So I can do this almost on the sleep, but being able to talk about something that is a bit out of my comfort zone, push me. And this feels good. And obviously, networking. I have got this picture with Mariangela Capello during the Image 22, and I encourage to read the book. It's kind of powerful tools that you can use, and they are accessible to everyone. Some toolbox, and the survivor, I'll call it. So basically, you see there is a roller coaster here. When you are here, how I can get to the top. So basically, I have done few. I have wrote few items here that is the ones that I have done in the past, and then what I have experienced. So we're starting with the first one. Usually, I would suggest to write down. People have got diaries. The ones I have used, it was just basically an Outlook blank sheet, and I put always minimum of 5 items, then they are positive. And I have done this 5 times, the 5 times, and I have moved around. And that has helped. In moments that the things are not good, you pull out, you read, and you realize that actually there is very good things why I'm on that position and I'm on that country. So getting value of what you have got in a positive way. Creating plans. I put the best to the worst scenarios, ABC. I'm a plan person. So it happened in two situations where my family and I, we had to have a net, the security nets, with 2 downturns saying what's happened if things can go very bad tomorrow. So we decided to define plans, then they had actions, timelines, and we always decide to choose the first ones we will need. Then it was easy to recover when we will be uphill. So if we were in Asia, we will find out a place, and it was easy for us to come back if when things they will pick up. And this means schools, it means business, it means a lot of things, and you need to take in account when you plan this. And the standard trends, the industry trends and gap analysis, I already touched on that. So basically understand where you are, what you have left, basically to reach that goal, and how to fill it to reach up. Learn from my own mistakes. I learned a lot. I learned a lot when I was offshore, but I learned a lot when I was in Asia. It's a lot related to my character. Sometimes I'm too spontaneous. Sometimes I need to step back, analyze the situation before I react. And a couple of examples that I have got in mind, it was related to meetings. So if I had the same situation, then of course today I will react very differently. So I'm learning from what has happened, and for next time I know then I will act differently. But I'm aware of that, so this is good. And please, you need to understand change happen, and it does has a warning, so we need to adapt. And the last, I think it's very important, the prepare for a rainy day. It's basically, it's a safety financial net. We are all in this industry. I believe we quite well remunerated compared to others. But today you have a job and tomorrow you might not. So please be aware that you need to have your finance right. Think about retirement, but also think that maybe your downturn is coming in 2 years and you need to have a financial backup to take off after that. What I have experienced in terms of practicals is that in some of the countries where it's difficult to work with, you need to have the rule of 3 Ps. Some people call 5 Ps, but for me, it's the patience, perseverance, and persistence. As I said, people add people. Some people add people of passion. I stick with the 3. And I give you an example just now, but also taking care and being able to look after yourself, having your time to think. Sometimes with the pressure and the family commitments, you don't think clear. It's good sometimes to step back, find a place and you feel good, or an activity I mean, I put here Peloton. Thanks to Peloton to exist, it's my time for me to think about it. Even if I'm doing exercise, my mind is blank. And then also, you own your career. Some companies, they have career development, some others they not. You own your career development. So this is something that you only can basically address, and don't give up, for sure. I mean, that's where we are today here, but action, it's super important. And it's basically the opposite of fear and comfort. And don't think that the opportunities come from the sky. They don't. As I said, you own your own career and your actions. A couple of examples from the toolbox. So as I said, I spent quite a lot of time in Asia, a lot of time in Indonesia, backs and forwards, almost weekly sometimes. It was something, basically, I laid all the seeds to make some projects in Indonesia after a long time of not having any multi-client in country. It was not easy, but we took relationship, understanding how the government works, understanding the regulation, and it was a moment then the regulation changed and they allow multi-client to work towards the work commitment, and we find an occasion to basically put a multi-client permits in country. We had some, at the time they were PSCs in Sumatra, then they were signed by 2 operators, and after a long journey, years of getting things aligned, we acquired the data set in the Andaman Sea in North Sumatra, where this is a beautiful image, and Harbour Energy drilled a well a few months ago, the Timpan one, where it was basically drilled with our GeoStreamer data, and a nice discovery. So it's a very rewarding result of that patience and that persistence and that perseverance, and keep going to get this project off the ground. And also from my old days in Africa, the networking is, as I said, it's important. And I had the chance to meet some of the regulators and the government in one conference in the Congo Kinshasa, and extrapolate this to the other Congo. We started building the relationship, and we created in 2009 the mega survey in Congo, where from there PGS has been building an enormous work and programs with the highest technology to basically position ourselves as one of our core markets. So thank you, PGS, to allow me to show this. And one thing I want to do before I move to the end is that there is very important time to think and invest in the future. Laying the foundations for something that will happen later on, the long-term view on your career, but also when you're working on the projects that you want to do. And finally, it's a beautiful industry, even if we are on a roller coaster all the time. Here is some of the pictures. It's myself cooking paella for everyone in the crew on one trip from Mexico to Brazil. This is New Year's Eve in the boat on the processing and imaging team. It's people that I still in contact 20 years after. So keep your relationships and networking going. Myself on a workboat on a streamer operation in Gulf of Mexico. And I love going outdoors. So I climbed the Mount Kinabalu in Malaysia. And I'm lucky to say that I have been in 83 countries in this world, thanks to be an expat and working in this industry. And here is my eldest son, James, on a Chinese New Year in Singapore. And then when I was presenting this, my other son was not happy because was not in the picture. So I said, well, let's put Artur. He was born in Singapore and now here in Houston. And my last slide, it's one that has got three items, as you can see. I think it's important to think about it. The first one, it's a mountain, but the most important thing, I can, I want, I will, I do. And basically, you can see a mountain here, and it's related to that proverb. Then it says, It's the mountain will not come to Mohammed, Mohammed must go to the mountain. And this expression is based on a tale. Then you might know about it, but basically what it says, then if things, they are not going your way, you will have to adjust the way that they are. The second one, it's they easy to feel like our individual actions, they don't matter or they don't contribute on the grand scheme of the things, but every little bit counts, and even the small action can make a difference. So please understand the positive impact that you can make. And it's important to remember that each individual has the power of making a difference. And the last one, it's key for me. It's empowerment. It's that little thing that pushes you to more. And as I said, I left it at the end. I don't know if you can read, but basically, it's if you put the women's, we are like in a tea bag, right? If you put it on a hot water, you can then feel how strong we are. But I want to say thank you for the people that encouraged me today to do this webinar, because otherwise I will not be delivering, I will be sitting on the back seat. So remember, please, as well as the end of my bit, then growth and being comfortable, they don't go together. So with that, I will pass to my dear friend, Christine.
Thank you, Adriana. Can you guys hear me? Yep, okay.
All good.
Perfect. So thank you for the setup about our talk and resilience in the oil and gas industry. And to give a little background about myself and my experiences and how I've handled changes and uncertainty, I'll give you a short background about my experience here. So I got my bachelor's of science at University of Mary Washington in Virginia. And then I got a master's of science at University of North Carolina. And to be completely transparent, my goal going into college was to be a high school history teacher. And clearly that did not pan out the way that I thought it would. And I also wasn't sure about the oil and gas industry. So when I heard there were opportunities to do internships, I worked hard to go ahead and land one of those. And I did an internship in the summer with Anadarko. After that internship, I was offered a full-time position. And I spent 10 years at Anadarko working a variety of different assets. So every 2 years, I would move into a different role, whether it was geoscience technology or onshore development, drilling a bunch of unconventional wells, or offshore exploration. So anytime I was approached with a move, once I got comfortable somewhere, it was time to move. And so I would say yes, so that I was always learning and always adding new skills into my career development. You can go to the next slide. So that all came to a crashing halt in 2019 when Anadarko was being sold. And I distinctly remember waking up to an email that the company was being sold to Chevron and thinking, oh my gosh, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my future? Everyone was completely blindsided at the whole company. When are things going to happen? Do I have a job? Will Chevron keep me? These are all questions that were floating through everybody's minds. And then we had even more uncertainty because it came to light that Oxy also wanted to buy Anadarko. So what usually happens behind closed doors and you get an email saying, okay, you're bought, was now happening in the middle of the public eye. So there was a lot of news, press, and information about the battle between Oxy and Chevron to buy the company that I worked for. So that just meant a lot more uncertainty for all of us employees, a lot of mental health anguish, a lot of fear of the unknown, and we didn't know what to do. And so it eventually became clear that Oxy was going to be the company that was going to buy Anadarko. And that meant that it was time to start interviewing with Oxy. And so everybody was either offered a position, not offered a position, or told to just keep on keeping along. We're not going to do anything with you right now. And that meant that there would be choices to make. Do you stay with the company? Do you leave? What are you going to do? And so I found it useful to make a pros cons list of all the different benefits or downsides to either of the decisions that would be made. And I wanted to do things that were more clear cut and less emotionally driven. And that helped me be a little bit more logical about what direction I wanted to go. I also wanted to be brave and not do what everyone else was doing. So it's okay to be different and not just follow along what other people are doing. And that really helped me make my decision, which ultimately was to leave Oxy at that point. So you can go to the next slide. And so the move was made to leave Oxy, and I went on to a position at BHP. And you'll notice that I have uncertainty looming again, and that's because I hired on at BHP on February 24th of 2020. So I had 2 weeks in the office with my team. I met a few of the other groups and the Gulf of Mexico exploration teams. And actually, I didn't meet everyone on my team because some people were on vacation and some people were just gone. And then we were all sent home for the next months as we all experienced. And so that's something that watching the world come to a complete stop was completely unexpected and had more fear of the unknown. And it was nothing somebody could expect or anticipate, same as the selling of Anadarko to Oxy. The price of oil went negative and everybody was laying people off. We worked for several months at home before BHP announced that they had their own layoff plan. And so once again, there was a lot of uncertainty looming, but this time I had less control over my fate, and the decision was made for me, and I was laid off. And I was devastated about what had happened, but I was not surprised, just based on my experience and date hire at the company. And to be honest, it took a while for me to be okay with understanding that your career is not tied solely to who you are as a person. And it's okay to not be okay. And I just dusted myself off and said, okay, well, you can't stay down about this for too long. So let's get to work and let's figure out what we're going to do. So if you go to the next slide, I went ahead and used the same toolbox that I did before. I wrote a pros cons list about what had happened so that it could be more logical about things. I told myself, okay, you're going to be brave. We're not going to do what everyone else is doing. And I'm not going to follow the status quo. And so I ended up landing a position at PGS, and it was an opportunity where I got to learn a ton about seismic acquisition and processing sides of things. And PGS has positions around the world and projects around the world, and being able to learn new things and see the new data is amazing. And so some of the lessons that I learned is that your self-worth is not solely tied to your career. You're your own person outside of being a geoscientist. And the people who care about you will check on you. And so that kind of leads me to my next point, which is that if you find yourself in a career rut or not being able to find an internship or a position, this is when networking becomes important. And I wrote purposeful networking here because it's one thing to just attend industry events, but you need to make purposeful connections while you're at those events or at those happy hours or wherever you may be. And it may be exhausting and hard and really difficult to try and put yourself out there and get to know people, but it can pay off in the end. So you can go to the next slide. So what comes next? I think that with understanding what resilience and grit is and being able to use these toolboxes, it's also important to know that keeping an open mind is very valuable. So you want to keep yourself always marketable. And keeping up with the changing priorities is definitely key. So there's a growing conversation around renewable energy and alternatives to fossil fuels. And if you keep an open mind about these rather than dismissing them, you'll be able to keep up with the demand and stay relevant to different industry conversations. Every new conference will have new sessions about carbon capture, geothermal, wind, whatever it may be. And to me, I want to remain relevant, to stay on top of these different opportunities. And companies are seeing that too. So companies are also diving headfirst into these different renewable energies. And so that way you can keep yourself relevant, and increasing the skills in your toolbox means just that you'll be able to converse with more people, and that way increase your network too. And then you can go to the next slide. So I guess what this all means for career resilience and career development, the reason Adriana and I talked to you about our experiences is to show you how, using similar tactics to what we've done in our careers, you can stay strong, curious, and relevant in this industry. So it's important to keep an open mind and expect the unexpected. You can never predict what's going to happen, just because so many of these things are out of your control. I mean, selling a company and being laid off are not things that you can really control sometimes. So working on your technical skills is important, but it's just as important to work on your soft skills, such as resilience. And I really like this quote here by the Greek philosopher. It says, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And so if I had, when Oxy had bought Anadarko, or when I got laid off, I just sat down and moped for a while, it wouldn't have made use of my time, and I would have, maybe had a little bit tougher time navigating my career in the industry. So you got to dust yourself off and get back to work. And so if you go to the final slide, it is important to always keep up with your network. So I think this is something that, you always want to make sure you're checking in on your network and meeting up for coffee, going to lunch, so that way you maintain your network. And if something happens, somebody can call you if they need. Don't forget to write pros, cons lists. Patience, perseverance, and persistence is very important. And always try and learn something new. And I like these statistics on the side here. Between 70 and 80% of jobs are never posted. And so it's important. This is why networking can be so important, because you need to keep yourself open to these different opportunities. And then finally, take a break when you need one. It's okay to need to take a mental break from not only the workload, but also the emotional load of it as well. And so with that, I think that, Adriana and I have told you everything we can about the different tools you can use in your toolbox, and I'll pass it back.
Thank you both so much. I really, really appreciate the honesty and just the realness of this presentation. That was really, I was gonna say wonderful to hear, not wonderful to hear because it's been tough, but also you still have hope and so much passion for this through all of it. So thank you for sharing that. I have one question, and as people have questions, please type them into the Q&A. I've seen a lot of friends in industry who are having to make these transitions to these different spaces. So what recommendations would you have for students, early career, honestly, even mid-career folks, in terms of training, in terms of if they're still in school, classes they should take to kind of prepare for that energy transition and going into these different spaces?
I can answer first and then pass it to Adriana, but I guess what I would say is there's a lot of different articles that you can read that have come out from either the BEG or different governmental companies, where you can read papers and learn about the different regulations that are going to be made. Always keep up with what's going on as far as lease sale goes. So if you follow BOEM on LinkedIn, they'll let you know when there's different wind auctions offshore and everything. And that way you can just kind of keep yourself up to date on what's going on with the industry activity. And then, yeah, places like the BEG have a lot of papers, and they'll do webinars and everything too. So that way you can continue to add things to your toolbox that are free opportunities.
Yeah, I will echo that. We are in this era, then the information is available to everyone. So, and you can subscribe to newsletters, and as Christine said, there is a lot out there. There is also programs done by the societies that they are, if you are a student or recent graduate, they are very, very cheap, or sometimes even they're free. Then is it worth it to take a look? So. 20 years ago, we didn't have this variety of access. So, and one thing I wanted to mention, that we keep up with all this technology, right? Everyone, I was looking, iPhone 14. You need to keep up this as well with our own industry. If we're still being the typical phone, and we know the iPhone 14, we have a problem. So we need to be trained and be interested and read to basically keep up.
Well, and I also noticed this bullet you have here on the slash side about 70% of all jobs are not published publicly on job sites. Wow, gosh, I mean, what do you recommend to figure out what those jobs are?
I do think it is just purposeful networking. So it's one thing to go to events and just say, you know, attend and talk to the same people that you always talk to, or if you go with a friend and you and your friend only talk to each other, I would say go make a point to talk to somebody new, somebody who looks like maybe they have influence in the industry, and don't just make small talk about the weather. Bring up important industry conversations, whether it's, you know, a conversation about carbon capture, and maybe you can try and teach somebody something, and then make sure you exchange LinkedIn or cards or something, and that way they can think about you if those conversations ever come up with colleagues of theirs in the future, and they say, oh, you know what, I learned this from, you know, Adriana at this conference last year.
I guess also is related to attending programs. A bit the coach or the mentor mentee that is available. It's very good to meet people and keep basically engaging. It's not just a shallow meetup. You get into the depth, and you need to understand the relationship. So it's cultivating.
And we've been sharing the link for Mentoring 365.
Have you? Okay.
Here. Okay. So have you mentored someone through that program now?
I enrolled for this year. I was previously on the AAPG, and I was through another one as well. And in both cases, it was great. So I said, I want to get back to that. And even if I can get more hands-on, even better.
Yeah, I've done that program too. And I can't encourage that enough for anyone watching this, because part of the networking problem too, though, is like, right, having the resources to get to those conferences, for example, and to be able to meet those people. So here's a way that's accessible, that's virtual, and you can network with someone in different continents. I worked with someone in Africa. And so I never could have done that. And we never would have been able to meet otherwise without, if we hadn't gone through that space. Do you have any recommendations for someone when they're trying to like look through that to identify like, who would they reach out to be a mentor? Just based on your own interactions with it.
I have got a lot of my colleagues. I mean, in Asia, it's the elderly people. They is a respect. So I have got through my career a couple of mentors, I would say, then they were not officially mentors, they are ex-colleagues that for me, they are pillars as advisors of how I could, in times then the things were not great, then they have basically take me along the journey. So I advise for people to find this role. It doesn't need to be one, not 10, but a couple of 3 people, then you have the option to call anytime and be able to ask sincerely what is the pain points and how they can help you.
Okay, and then I'll go ahead, Kristen.
Oh, I was just gonna add, a lot of times the mentor ends up being somebody who you end up being friends with, and it's sometimes a coworker, or maybe it's your advisor, or maybe it's a different professor at university who really you kind of form a bond with, and that ends up being who your mentor is.
And I'm going to throw a question out here that's related to resiliency that I'd like to see us always talk more about, which is, in order to be resilient, you also have to practice self-care. So I'd love to hear, like, how do you practice self-care?
That's, I guess
we all do it differently, so it's actually
it is.
Examples.
For me, it's a lot on the exercise. Also finding time for myself, which is quite difficult to be honest. I will throw it. Having a shower. My time is my time. I got this click, then I've got 5 minutes maximum, then I can have a shower. But it's the best time to think and having time for me. And a lot of the ideas comes that, but a lot of the I would say that not just ideas, it's thoughts, is when I'm relaxed on holiday. So yeah.
And I guess the way is that I practice self-care. I do a lot of reading or listening to audiobooks on my drive. And I also like to paint and crochet. And so if I can find time to do that, that's something that I'll do. But it doesn't have to, self-care comes in many different forms. And so one thing that I think is important, if you do find yourself in a rut where you just can't really find something positive, is that there's been some research done that gratitude journals can really help people change their mindset over time. And if you just find one thing every day to write down about something that went right and keep up with it, that's been shown to really kind of help change people's mindsets.
That's awesome. We're just at the hour here now, so I don't want to take any more of your time, but thank you so much. I really really enjoyed your presentations, this conversation, and just thank you for being a part of our webinar series.
No, thank you so much. And one thing I want to mention is that I've actually found on LinkedIn, if you follow the Harvard Business Journal, I think it is, they have a lot of really good articles about navigating your career and emotional intelligence and things like that. So that's a good resource as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming.